Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, ladies and gentlemen. In this very special occasion, I would like to introduce the speakers of Group 5. There are two members of this group. The first one is Fajriati Webah Mosambonga, and the second one is Milatus Zulfa. We will present about lineage, gender, and sexuality. And the first speaker will be Fajriati Waibah Mosambonga. Defining terms about gender, sex category, and sexuality. First one is gender. Gender is based on sex categories, is culturally constructed. What is considered to be masculine or feminine differs from one society to another. Gender refers to the cultural traits and behavior deemed appropriate for man or woman by a particular society. Second one is sex categories. It is based on the biological distinction, not always completely clear, between male and female. There may also be additional culturally specific categories that define people who do not fall easily into these first two categories. For example, in India, there are Hijras and Kotis, which are different groups of people who exhibit physical and or behavioral characteristics of both sex categories. And the last one, sex is a word used in connection with the biological characteristics that mark humans and other animals as either male or female. So sexuality is an individual's identity in terms of his or her sexual activities. Now we move to sexist lineage. Some cases found in the field. First is the so-called generic he and the use of man or mankind to refer to all people. Penelope, in 1988, discusses how such usage exclude women and create the mentality that men are the default and the norm, and women are the exception. Another issue is most commonly sex category mark names of people in specific occupations. For example, fireman, stewardess, and waitress. The problem with such words is that they could influence what professions we see as being appropriate for only men or only women. This problem has been addressed by the introduction of gender-neutral terms such as firefighter and flight attendant, common usage in North America. There is still considerable doubt that changing waitress to either server or wait person or describing Nicole Kidman as an actor rather than as an actress indicates a real shift in sexist attitudes. Reviewing the evidence, Romain in 1999 concludes that attitudes toward gender equality did not match lineage usage. Further, there is not necessarily consensus about what constitutes sexism in lineage. The argument made by this poster and others is that what is sexist is not a term, such as waiter or actor, which are gender-neutral terms, but the assumption that we must change the words when women do these jobs. Others point out that the issue is that we had gender pairs of terms such as waiter-waiters, and there is no such gender pair for the word president in English. In other occupations, words that were often assumed to imply the sex of the person might be prefaced by a gender marker, such as male nurse, We should know that men are increasingly found in the nursing profession, and nurse is less frequently interpreted as implying female, just as the assumption that a doctor is male is no longer the default. And language can also encode and perpetuate heterosexist attitudes. For grammatical gender marking, there are differentiation between male or female nature, and they're also more extensive in other languages than English. Roman in 1999 states that ideological factors in the form of cultural beliefs about women enter into gender assignment in grammatical systems that are supposedly purely formal and arbitrary. And they're also natural, biased, and cross-linguistic perspective from the grammatical gender marking. As Mills in 2008 notes, the word for minister in France is masculine, le minister, so it is difficult to refer to a female minister. The norm in languages such as French and Spanish is to use the masculine plural for groups containing both man and woman. In German, some changes have occurred, including more use of the feminine plural ending "innen" instead of the masculine plural "an" for groups of men and women, and in some cases the introductions of words that do not mark gender for plurals. One particular bit of sexism in language that has aroused much comment is the gender systems that so many of them have the he, she, it natural gender system of English, or the le, la, or their, die, das grammatical gender systems of French and German. Lineage change. Lineage would reflect or have formed changing gender roles. Asymmetries in pairs of words, few or many. E.g., while actor and actress or waiter and waiters have few, if any, differences in connotations aside from sex, pairs of terms such as master mistress, governor governess, and bachelor spinster are different in more ways than simply indicating male and female. While a master is the man in charge, the word mistress is commonly used to refer to the female lover of a married man. Being a governor is an important political position. A governess is someone who takes care of children, while bachelor has connotations of fun and independence, as in the term bachelor pad. Spinster is an undeniably negative term, calling up the image of an elderly woman living alone with lots of cats. However, is that probably most readers of these texts do not use the words mistress, governors, or spinster at all. If they know these words, they may not be familiar with the connotations here, as societal change have made these terms less prominent and relevant, especially for young people today. Another is gender asymmetries in modern-day English, e.g., while it is common to refer to adult females as girls, even in a professional context, for example, a bank employee might tell a customer that the girl who handles the housing loans is out today. Such usage occur far less commonly with boy. One rarely hears reference to the boy who managed the produce section. Next is language planning, or either change or modify language. Worfian view. Language action is social action. Linguistic change is to effect social change. And small change in heterosexist language. Still in language change, in another example, we see a clearer asymmetry in the difference between the meaning of mothering a child, which implies nurturing, and fathering a child, which simply implies contributing to the child's conception. However, Even here we see some change as the term parenting is now used in some contexts in which mothering was used earlier. Some small change in heterosexist lineage practice can also be seen. One example is in reference to partners. Some heterosexual married couples will refer to their spouses as partners to avoid indexing the heterosexual privilege of legal marriage. At the same time, as marriage equality is achieved in some regions, the use of the terms husband and wife for same-sex partners is not uncommon, so these terms are no longer reserved for heterosexuals only. Discourses of gender and sexuality. Discourse can be described as ways of representing facets of the world, that is, the processes, relations, and structures of the world, as well as feeling, thoughts, and beliefs about the social world. Fellow 2003. Johnston 2008 describes discourse as conventional ways of talking which create and are created by conventional ways of thinking. These connected ways of thinking constitute ideologies. Consequently, discourses have linguistic aspects, conventionalized sets of choices in language, and also ideological aspects, patterns of beliefs and action. Discourses of gender and sexuality is how ideologies about gender, sex categories, sexuality, and so on are produced and reproduced through language and language use. Some common discourses. The discourse of heteronormativity is one of the most pervasive. Cameron and Kulik, 2003, 2006, Quotes, 2013, Motsenbetter, 2011, Kitzinger, 2005. This discourse requires an assumption of heterosexuality and the stigmatizing of gay and lesbian identities. Milani in 2013 illustrates the hegemony of heteronormativity in his study of Meat Market, an online dating site for men looking for other men in South America. One study showing how heteronormativity begins in primary school is Reynolds in 2000, which addresses how discourses about girls needing to be attractive to boys but not dirty is pervasive and contrasts with boys' constructions of heterosexuality through fighting, football, homophobia, and misogyny, not aspects of behavior that are aimed at being attractive to girls. Another common gender discourse has to do with the value of women being linked to their physical appearances. O'Hara and Saft in 2003 look at data from Japanese phone-in consultation program and saw how this ideology is represented by a female caller who discusses how she dealt with her husband's infidelity by making herself more attractive. In some cases, the discourses involve ideologies about other aspects of culture or lineage ideologies more broadly. An example of this is given in Cameron 2008, in which he addresses some broader ideas about lineage, arguing that it is increasingly discussed as a set of skills. She looks at varied texts from the United Kingdom.
The next explanation about deficit dominance difference and identities. There are some claims to gender-exclusive language. It is the situations in which men and women have different ways of speaking that could be deemed different language. or at least distinct and named dialects of language. For example, like Yana language, it is from California. It is contains special form for use in speech either by or to women. The second is triple. It's from North Queensland, Australia. It have a special language which is gender differentiated in a rather novel way. And then Yanyua. This is the language from Australian Aboriginal language, which endangered language. It has gender differentiated dialects. The dialects use the same word stems, but there are different class marking prefixes on nouns, verbs, and pronouns. The other language is Japanese. Japanese women show they are women when they speak, for example, by the use of a sentence final particle ni or another particle wa. And then child, guy, and lesbian. Recognizing the relationship between language and other social practice and structures, it is called by gender preferential language. The next is about women's language. Deficit model means how women's language place that was generally seen as inferior to that occupied by men. There are some devices in communicational devices that is used by women. The first is take questions and then hedging devices, raising intonations, and then less able to participate in serious activities in the social sphere. For example, empty adjectives, lexicon specific to domestic domains. The importance of lack of work by confirming that the ways of speaking which are associated with women are associated with lack of power. This theme of power being encoded and created through language use in one that has wide applications. Let's move to the dominance. Dominance approach it is addresses power relations between the sexes. There are claims that there is evidence that in cross-gender conversation. The first is women ask more questions than men. And then women use more back-channel signals, like verbal and non-verbal feedback to show they are listening to encourage others to continue speaking. Women use more intenses of you and we and do not protest as much as men when they are interrupted. In their interactional patterns in conversation, men and women seem often to exhibit the power relationship that exists in society, with men dominant and women subservient. The next is about difference. There is the assumption that men and women speak differently. It was proposed by the psychologist Jonathan Gray in his best-selling book entitled Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, the classic guide to understanding the opposite sex, in 1992, and by the linguist Deborah Tannen in her book entitled You Just Don't Understand, Women and Men in Conversation in 1990. The main claim is that men and women have different conversational goals, and thus, although they may say the same things, they actually mean different things. Here are some different things between men and women. For men, mostly ignorant, challenging, interrupting, controlling about topics, and for women, mostly questioning, reacting to the sentences, less protesting, and less interrupting. The last is about gender and sexuality identities. Identity may be constructed through a variety of linguistic means. For instance, the use of certain lexical forms or language varieties may contribute to the identification of a speaker. just as particular communicative practices such as silence, greeting formulas, or case two. In language varieties, Cameron shows how a key component in the conversation. She analyzes the use to establish heterosexuality, discussing other men and calling them gay, while Kisling looks at how one member of a fraternity uses different ways of speaking to construct different types of masculinity. The stereotype about femininity and how speakers position themselves in alignment with or in opposition to less dominant ideologies. Controversies and disagreements. Not everyone agrees that the focus on identity is the best way to look at gender and sexuality, because research on language, gender, and sexuality has been done in a variety of ways. That's all about this discussion, and thank you for listening and watching.